You've probably seen the movie Angels and Demons, right? High-stakes thriller, ticking clock, the whole deal. But what you might not know is that the terrifying science at the heart of that movie, it's very, very real. Today, we're diving headfirst into the absolutely mind-blowing world of antimatter.
So the entire film is built around this insane idea. A bomb powered by just a single drop of this stuff that's powerful enough to completely wipe out the Vatican. But could that actually happen? Is that even remotely in the realm of possibility? Well, that's the big question we're going to answer.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to untangle the Hollywood fantasy from the surprising reality. Then, we'll check out the clever science that's actually hidden in the movie's symbolism. After that, we'll get into the building blocks of annihilation itself. From there, we'll see how this wild idea might just explain how our entire universe came to be. And finally, we'll answer it. Is the ultimate weapon fact or is it fiction?
All right, let's dive right into our first section, fact, fiction, or both. We're going to start by uncovering just how much of this thriller is actually grounded in real-world science. And trust me, the answer is probably going to surprise you. So get this, the core pieces of the plot are not made up. Antimatter? Oh yeah, it's a real thing. And that lab, CERN, where it was supposedly stolen from, that is a very real, world-famous physics laboratory over in Switzerland. In fact, the filmmakers actually worked directly with the scientists at CERN to get the details as right as they could, because this kind of research was exactly what they were focused on at the time.
Okay, next up, let's look at the science that's hiding in plain sight, in the symbolism. It turns out the movie is just packed with these clever little metaphors that are tied directly to the real physics it's talking about.
Think about the title itself, Angels and Demons. It's not just a simple good versus evil thing. No, it's a perfect metaphor for matter and antimatter. In physics, these two things are perfect, mirror image opposites, and when they touch, they don't just bump into each other, they completely, utterly annihilate. That is exactly why that stolen canister in the movie was so incredibly dangerous. And the symbolism gets even deeper. The villains call themselves the Illuminati, right? Well, that word means the enlightened. And that name is so clever because when matter and antimatter annihilate, you don't get a normal explosion with fire and smoke. You get a burst of pure energy in the form of pure light. Their name literally describes the scientific outcome of their weapon.
So we've had our fun with the Hollywood version. Now let's get into the real science. Where did this incredible, world-changing idea even come from in the first place? First, just a super quick refresher. Matter is, well, it's everything. It's the stuff. The chair you're in, the phone in your hand, you, me, it's all made of these tiny fundamental particles, like electrons and protons. You can think of them as the universe's most basic Lego bricks. Okay, so back in 1928, a physicist named Paul Dirac was playing around with the equations that describe these particles, and he hit a wall. His own math was predicting something else, kind of like a shadow version of matter. And then, just 4 years later, another scientist actually found it in nature, hiding in cosmic rays. And today, places like CERN create it pretty much every single day. So how in the world did Dirac predict this? It all came down to the math. See, his equations were acting like a simple algebra problem. If x squared equals 4, what's the answer? Well, it can be 2, but it can also be -2. He realized his equations for energy also had two solutions, a positive one for normal matter and a negative one. Now, at first, he thought it was a mistake. But then he had this brilliant leap of imagination. What if the negative number wasn't an error? What if it was describing a real particle, an antiparticle?
Now, this discovery didn't just add a new particle to the list. Nope. It totally flipped our understanding of where everything, and I mean everything, came from. It turns out antimatter is a crucial character in the origin story of the universe itself.
To get this, you have to wrap your head around a truly wild idea from quantum physics. It turns out that empty space isn't really empty at all. You got to think of it more like a simmering soup of energy, where pairs of matter and antimatter particles are constantly, spontaneously popping into existence for a fraction of a second before vanishing again. They call them quantum fluctuations. So what does this have to do with the Big Bang? Well, the leading theory is that the universe itself kicked off as one of these fluctuations. In that first moment, equal amounts of matter and antimatter were created. Almost instantly, they slammed into each other in a great annihilation, turning the brand new universe into a sea of pure energy and light. But, and this is the key part, for some reason we still don't fully understand, there was just a tiny bit more matter than antimatter. A tiny little remnant survived.
And that leftover stuff, well, that's everything.
Every star, every planet, every galaxy, you, me, we are all just the cosmic shrapnel that made it through that first, universe-defining war between matter and antimatter. We are here because of a tiny rounding error at the very beginning of time. Pretty crazy, right?
Which, of course, brings us all the way back to our very first question. Now that we understand the incredible science behind it, let's fact-check the movie. Could this cosmic power really be turned into a weapon?
So, the theory is 100% sound. It all boils down to Einstein's famous equation, E-mc². What that tells us is that mass and energy are basically two sides of the same coin. And when matter and antimatter meet, a full 100% of their mass is converted into pure raw energy. It is the most efficient, most powerful energy release possible in the universe.
How efficient are we talking? Well, if you took just 1 gram of antimatter and annihilated it with 1 gram of regular matter, the energy released would be more powerful than the nuclear bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. So yeah, the power they talk about in the movie is not an exaggeration. But there's a catch, a big one. To create that single, city-destroying gram of antimatter, using the absolute best technology we have today at a place like CERN, it would take about 1 billion years. So here's the reality check. While the destructive power of antimatter is totally real, the practicality of actually building a weapon with it is pure science fiction. It's ridiculously hard and expensive to make, it vanishes the instant it touches literally anything, and we can only produce it in amounts so small you can't even see them. So thankfully, an antimatter bomb is not something we need to lose sleep over.
In the end, the most amazing thing about antimatter isn't about destruction at all. The truly awe-inspiring idea that comes out of all this science is one of creation. It's the idea that the rules of matter and antimatter mean that our whole, vast, beautiful universe could have, quite literally, sprung into existence from absolutely nothing.
And that leaves us with one of the single biggest unanswered questions in all of physics. If equal amounts of matter and antimatter were created in the Big Bang, and our universe is what's left of the matter, then what happened to its twin? Where did all the antimatter go? That's a mystery that scientists are still desperately trying to solve today.